Not long after the mighty barbarian king had made his presence known in the village, he shared his story on how he became so big and powerful. The alchemists from the laboratory paid very close attention and wished to replicate this on other troops. So for months they performed tests on almost every single troop within the village. They would take 2 of each troop, feed one a lot of dark elixir, and then the other one just a few sips. Then they attempted to electrocute them to get the same reaction as that had happened with the barbarian king. Sadly, they had no success. Hundreds of innocent troops' lives have been lost in an attempt to create another super troop or hero. But don't get too angry about this, because it's not murder or anything like that. Because after each troop died, they turned into elixir. Then they would take that elixir and go train a troop again. This went on for about 3 months, and during that time the village progressed so much that it was able to upgrade its town hall all the way to Town Hall 9. And shortly after the town hall was finished being upgraded, the alchemists tried an experiment on the archers. There were 2 archers named Ark and Her. They gave Ark a whole bottle of dark elixir, and Her got a small sip. They went through the exact same process of being electrocuted, then both fell to the floor. The alchemists were disappointed in another failure and decided to call it a day, so they locked up the laboratory and left. But what they didn't know was that the archers hadn't died, since they didn't turn into elixir. They simply fainted from the shock. They were each wearing their special friendship bracelets that were made out of gold that they got from the gold mine, and the gold was able to conduct most of the electricity from the shock. So both archers got up and quickly realized that they were locked in a pitch black room inside of the lab. At first they freaked out, but to pass time they took turns telling each other stories about how much fun it would be to create an arena where they could just battle against other kingdoms, just troops versus other troops, and they could call it something like Clash Rumbles or Clash Battles. But before they could figure out a better name for it, the door to the lab bursted open and light shined in on them. The archers were so happy to see daylight again that they ran right past the alchemists into the open. The alchemists were incredibly confused and wondering what just happened. Then they turned around and saw 2 archers, but then they disappeared. And then they were there again. They were sort of flickering as if they were there and then not. Not only were the alchemists shocked, but the archers were too. This was the first time that they were seeing themselves as well. And Ark, the archer that drank more of the dark elixir, was almost 3 times the size of a regular archer. But then one of the alchemists screamed, and everyone else screamed too. Everyone was scared of the archers, but the archers claimed that they weren't ghosts. So the troops were not sure, and they decided to capture the 2 archers and they took them to the king for him to decide. He could either have them killed for being ghosts and possibly being evil, or he could set them free and maybe use their powers for something good. The king couldn't decide on his own, so he decided to put it to a vote. He asked all of the villagers and nearby villages for their opinions, and he said that by the same time next week, he will tally the votes and decide. A week later, after counting all of the votes, it was determined that the archers would not be killed. They figured that ghosts really aren't that scary, especially considering that they have dragons, giant metal robots, and rock golems roaming all around the place. So even if they were ghosts, it wouldn't actually be that scary. Since they decided to let the archers live, they still wanted to figure out why they were sometimes turning invisible and sometimes not. So the alchemists took a look and realized that their experiment had actually worked. However, not in the way that they expected. It turns out that they had different abilities compared to the barbarian king, Ian. So since Ian was the only one who had been through this before, he wanted to help Ark and Her to master their abilities and teach them to use it properly. So the next few weeks they trained all day, every day. They found that they didn't have the same ability as Ian the barbarian king. Rather than raging and spawning barbarians, they were both able to turn invisible for a few seconds, where no one could detect them. They could turn invisible on command, but them staying invisible ate up a lot of energy, and would take a while before they could do it again. Ark also seemed to be much better at this than Her was. Plus, Ark seemed to have the ability to do even more than Her. She could regenerate her health, spawn more mini archers, and do way more damage. Even Ian was impressed with what she could do. He was really impressed by Ark, and after a full day of training, the 3 of them decided to go out for something to drink at the Clash Tavern, where they each ordered a round of elixir. But Ian, being the king of the village, got a special bottle of dark elixir instead. While they were all enjoying themselves, Ian ended up talking to the village chief, and the chief was mentioning something about how, now that the village is getting bigger and stronger, he may need a queen to help him rule the village. Ian thought this was a really silly idea, but it also rested in the back of his mind, knowing very well that it was also true. The next day at training, both of the archers had pretty much mastered their new abilities. Then at the end of their training, He declared that their training has come to an end, and that it was up to them to use their abilities for the greater good of the village. And then the next day, they entered into their first battle since becoming these new super troops. During the battle, Ark absolutely dominated and helped carry her team to the 3-star, whereas her wasn't even deployed because the chief must have forgotten about her. And like the Barbarian King, Ark was also immortal and was able to be used in the next battle after a short rest. Ark was praised around the village and everyone adored her. After everyone was finished congratulating Ark on a great battle, Ian approached her and asked her to be his new queen. So Ian proposed, and then Ark replied with a gleeful yes. And their wedding was set to happen the next day. Everyone was excited, except for her, since she was jealous of Ark for being stronger and having more powers, and for getting to marry the king of the village. Although she was jealous, she was also Ark's best friend, so she wanted to be there to support her. So on the day of their wedding, they each went through their vows, and when it came time for Ian's speech, he said, "Thank you all very much for being here. Now that we are happily married, together we will rule this kingdom, and she will assist me in getting many more 3-stars for this village. We both swear that we will defend this village with our lives, and to lead our troops into battle. This day marks a new age in our village, and things will never be the same again." And he was right. Things were definitely going to change, hopefully for the better. After the wedding, Her went to go congratulate the two on their marriage, and Ark was so happy to see her. Ark said, "Thank you so much. I honestly don't know what I would do without my best friend. You're the best." And as days passed, Ark and Ian were still happily married and continued to be the backbone of all of their attacks, and also helping out on defense. They truly were the heroes of the village, and were irreplaceable. And Her usually stayed back at the village since she wasn't immortal like Ark. So Ark kept her at home to protect her from any dangers. And as days went by and months passed, the new Archer Queen kept getting stronger and stronger, until eventually she was even stronger than the Barbarian King, and Ian was not happy about that. In fact, he felt a bit threatened, that people might like her more than him. So he had to do something about that. Not long after Ian and Ark had gotten married, they both continued to be the village's favorite troops. They would stomp on just about every base they would attack, so obviously the village continued to use all of their available Dark Elixir to upgrade their powers even more. And as the days went on, the village kept farming Dark Elixir. But it seemed that the villagers had chosen a favorite hero. In battles, people were choosing to use healers to keep the queen alive, but they would just send the Barbarian King as a sacrifice. Now obviously the two heroes were immortal, so it didn't matter too much. However, the Barbarian King was pretty upset that no one liked him as much. He also felt that since he was the first hero, he deserved most of the love from the villagers. But that clearly wasn't the case, because not only were people doing queen walks and never king walks, they were also leveling the queen and ignoring the king. This was really starting to get the Barbarian King frustrated, but he didn't do anything. He just kept trying his best in battles and did his best to get through each day, living in the Archer Queen's shadow. But then one day, the entire village came bearing gifts for the royals, as a way to say thank you for all of their help in battles and on defense. So first they brought the king a new metal glove that can be used for extra protection in battle. Ian said his thank yous, and then they moved on to the Archer Queen's gift. They handed her a brand new creation. It was a miniature Expo variant created by the master builder himself. This mini Expo was the most powerful weapon in the village and could destroy most buildings in only a few hits. So the queen, who was ecstatic, said thank you and then went to go test it out. After seeing what the queen had gotten, Ian felt super betrayed that they would give her a super cool gift, but then he only got a new metal glove. He was also already feeling pretty down that everyone liked the queen more than him, but this was the last straw. He was sick and tired of being second to the queen, so he decided that it was time for him to do something. He knew that he couldn't do anything directly to the queen, since she was stronger than him, and besides, everyone would probably know this, so he had to think of something that could indirectly affect her, and then it hit him. He quickly got to work and took a quick visit to the alchemist. The wizards handed over a grey vial and told the king that this spell hasn't been released yet, we are still working on it, and we aren't sure of the side effects yet, but it's supposed to knock out whichever troop you use it on, and they shouldn't wake up for at least a week. We call it the sleep spell. So Ian grabbed the spell and also snagged a heal spell while he was at it, and then he did something sinister. He went to find the Archer Queen's best friend and then used the sleep potion on her. She instantly passed out and began snoring. He then picked her up and took her to the beach. There he saw a barbarian, hog rider, and wizard sitting down, talking about what they think was out beyond the horizon. That gave him an idea. He took the sleeping archer to a secret boat and put the archer down in the cabin area, and laid the heal spell down right next to her. And then he got out and pushed the boat out towards the hog rider and wizard. After that, they were never seen in the village again. The archer queen began freaking out that her best friend had disappeared, and it was really starting to affect her mental state. Some raids, she would be so distracted that she would start targeting walls, even when there was a really obvious building nearby. You could almost say that her new favorite target was the wall. People started getting really frustrated at her, so Ian felt like he had successfully achieved what he wanted. But back to the boat. There was a really bad storm that caused the boat to crash into a mysterious island. Unfortunately, the hog rider and wizard did not make it, but lucky for the archer, the heal spell bottle broke and healed her from her injuries, keeping her alive when the boat crashed. So when the sleep spell wore off, she got out of the broken boat and explored the mysterious island. And not after long, she found two individuals in what looked like a mini village. One was a barbarian holding an axe, and the other said that he called himself the Master Builder.